the interaction with social is very non-linear. It's not a 1, 2, 3, 4 step and then they're on the site. Like, they're trying to digest content on the platform. I mean, you could think about when you're on Instagram, you're not on Instagram and like, "Oh, yeah, let me go to that website." Like, you're on Instagram to be on Instagram, and so if you got something great that was served to you, amazing, you save it, you send it to somebody, like, "Look at this." Right? And so those are the behaviors that we're more interested in as a social team, and then the rest is kind of just our due diligence to make sure that we're having some sort of business impact.
This is Social Pulse Podcast. Social media simplified, impact amplified. Each week, we equip social media professionals like you with actionable strategies and diverse insights from peers, experts, and leading platforms. It's all about empowering you to simplify the complex and make a real impact with your host, Mike Alton. And now, the rest of today's episode. Welcome back to Social Pulse Podcast, where each and every week we're talking to marketing professionals like you, going through many of the same struggles you're going through and sharing their stories. Subscribe to find in each episode the inspiration, the motivation, and the perspiration that go into growing and scaling organizations like yours. I'm wondering, you tired of posting the same exact content across all your social media channels, only to see it fall flat on some platforms while performing well on others? You're nodding your head. You're not alone. Many B2B marketers struggle with this common challenge, trying to make one piece of content work everywhere, or worse, feeling overwhelmed by the need to create entirely separate content for each platform. What if there was a better way? What if you could learn how to strategically adapt your core message for different platforms while maintaining brand consistency? Today's guest has mastered exactly that. I'm excited to welcome Meghan Pontius from Red Door Interactive, who's developed expertise in cross platform content strategy through her work with numerous brands. As a certified social listening expert and digital marketing strategist, Meghan brings a wealth of knowledge about creating platform specific content that resonates with B2B audiences while maintaining a cohesive brand message across all channels. Hey, Meghan, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So glad you could be here with us. I can't wait to dive into this. Quite frankly and transparently, this is one of my biggest issues as a B2B marketer myself, my personal brand. I'm honestly just throwing the same content up on every single channel and not customizing it all. And I know I should, and I'm hoping to learn from you exactly what I should do. But before we dive in, share a bit about your journey. How did you get into B2B social media strategy, and what led you to kind of think about and focus on a cross-platform content strategy?
Yeah, totally. So my social media journey actually started in higher ed, which while not traditionally B2B, actually has
Yeah.
a lot of overlap just as an industry in more of the B2B space, right? It has complexity. You're speaking to different stakeholders at different times. It's highly regulated. So with that, I think like some of those strategic touch points kind of came over into my role now. But really how I got into B2B social media strategy was how we operate at our agency. We don't have like we have a very lean internal marketing team. And so we leverage subject matter experts across our various teams to actually create like an in-house team. So that's where a lot of my B2B experience comes into play is actually like the social media strategy that we do for our own agency. We do have a few B2B clients, but really I'm knee deep in agency life when it comes to social strategy. So that's a little bit of how I got into it. What really led me to focus on cross-platform content is probably exactly what everybody what everybody would say in this realm is there's just not enough hours in the day, right? And
Yeah.
don't feel bad, like, everybody posts things, and even we do it occasionally where we throw something up and we're like, "We should probably change it for that platform, but this is what we have to work with." But we've really been focusing on creating very intentional purposes for our channels. And so you can still use that same core content, but you always want to shape it for like, what are we trying to achieve with this channel? Right now, just for like background, we're primarily on Instagram and LinkedIn. And I think what's interesting is people think Instagram's not a B2B channel, but I think those barriers are down in 2025, right? Um, it's not that Instagram can't be a B2B channel. We're all humans. Probably everybody sitting in the room is on Instagram at some point in time. It's just about making sure that you're reaching their intent, like why they're on that channel, with your message so that you're not just like shoving something at them that they don't want. So that's really what I think about when I think about like cross-platform content is not whether the platform's right, but whether what you're serving them meets their expectations for when they're scrolling.
I think that's a really key distinction. There's a nuance to what you just said that I want to underscore because I don't think a lot of people think about it this way. A lot of people will think about how we might want to tailor certain content for different channels. There's different
Mhm.
audiences or different intent and that sort of thing. But if you put it the way you did, which was to say, and I'm going to paraphrase, if I'm pushing a content out to a particular channel that's not what my audience wants, I'm just shoving it in their faces and they're going to tune me out.
Yeah.
They're not going to engage with that content, which means they won't see the next post, even if it's better. And I think that's the fatal flaw that a lot of businesses are falling into. Are there
Yeah.
other big mistakes that you see, not you, but other businesses making when it comes to, social media and B2B content?
Yeah. I think there's a handful. I do think, like, coming back to realistically, what platforms are we on? I think when social media first came up, everybody was like, "Let's just be everywhere." Then you have TikTok come on and you're like, "Let's get on TikTok," right? And there's this, like, desire to be an early adopter. Um, but I think now we're coming to the day of, like, you don't need to be everywhere, right? Maybe TikTok just doesn't make sense for your brand. That's not to say it's not a B2B channel. It certainly could be depending on what your B2B like industry is. But just because every platform exists doesn't mean you need to be on it. And that's like the first mistake I see is like people just wanting to jump into something or wanting to adopt something or thinking they need to be everywhere when in reality, like we actually see a lot of success just from LinkedIn. Like if tomorrow we said, let's just be on LinkedIn, I would have no problem with that as a social media manager. Um, I think the other thing, and we talked about it up at the top, is like missing that user intent. So it's less that you shouldn't be copy pasting things across channels, but when somebody gets onto Instagram, they're in a different mindset than if they're scrolling LinkedIn. And so, like, eh, it's yeah, you might copy paste the literal words, but how that content shows up has to be much more entertaining on Instagram than it maybe needs to be on LinkedIn. Maybe LinkedIn needs to be a little bit more provocative, right? It has to get them to be like, "Oh, I never thought of it that way." Um, and then coming down, like, I think all these lead together, but they are, like, the biggest mistakes I see is, um, remembering and I will say be the first to say, like, it's a hard thing to get past, we're culprits of this too, but it's content is never one and done. It's not like I checked a box, I promoted it. There's 5 different ways to talk about that piece of core content that you created, and there's probably multiple ways to talk about it across each platform, right? So one piece of content could be 10 posts, 5 on LinkedIn, 5 on Instagram, and it's such a disservice to all the work that you put into that big core piece of content to post it once and forget about it. Um, so yeah, I think all those things together are like the biggest mistakes I see companies making when it comes to sharing from a B2B space.
I could not agree more, particularly with your last point, and I wanna dissect that a little bit, but before I do, just to give everybody listening or watching some context, tell me a little bit about Door and the work that you do.
Yeah, yeah. So we're a fully integrated marketing agency. We operate. So I am the manager of the social and content team. So in our nature, we're very like cross channel in the sense that like even my team owns social media, email, and like web content, so like blogs. But we offer everything brand strategy, creative services, web development, SEO, right? So completely full service. And we're pretty much we've had clients from every, shape or form, but we are primarily in the higher ed, medical, and sports and active lifestyle industries. So we have like a kind of a split, I would say, often of whether it's B2B or direct to consumer, right? Because sports and active lifestyle, mostly going to be direct to consumer. Once you start getting into medical, though, you start getting into like tech and SaaS and things that are going to be more of that B2B side. So yeah, we have a pretty wide range of what we work in.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's fascinating. I
Mhm.
appreciate that. I think that's going to be really helpful to people to understand where you're coming from while
Totally.
you're talking about LinkedIn plus Instagram as a combination, for instance. So you talked about having one big piece of content and breaking up into multiple pieces of content. Walk us through that process. You've got one core piece. You're adapting it for different platforms. What are the factors you consider? How's that work for you?
Yeah, so I think firstly, so we've developed like, hey, here's our strategy, right, for our channels, and here's the purpose that they're going to play, and we're going to be very intentional to that purpose, and that just helps with like spinning on stuff a little bit. So the first thing is like always identifying where does this content fit that purpose? So hey, it's really easy. Like if I'm doing a thought leadership piece, definitely we're going to put it on LinkedIn. I think where it gets a little bit more, we have to think about it is on Instagram because realistically, what we're doing on LinkedIn is trying to be a thought leader. What we're doing on Instagram is more trying to show our core values and our company as like the human component of our company because that is like a big factor in what differentiates us from other agencies. But that doesn't mean we can't put thought leadership on Instagram. It just has to, can we make it come back to that purpose? Um, so that's like the number one thing is like, does it fit for the channel? Right. And that way we know, even if you are on 5 channels, maybe not every piece gets repurposed to all 5 channels. Right. Maybe it's on 3 and not on 2. So I think that's like the very first step that's really, really important because while that gets a little bit away from like, how do I repurpose? It can save you some time and effort of like, maybe I just shouldn't be repurposing this for this channel because it's just not what my goal, it's not aligned with my goals. Then as I said before, like I'm gonna take a step back to define that user intent on that channel. Okay, I've said we're gonna promote it on LinkedIn and on Instagram. I need to put myself in like, if I'm promoting it on LinkedIn, what does it need to do to stand out to somebody? Stop that scroll. I'm sure everybody's heard of that. But that's kind of
Mhm.
what we do next is like, what are we going to do to stop the scroll on this specific place? And that's what I mean by user intent. What's going to captivate somebody when they're in that app? Why did they open it in that moment, in that day? And how can your content kind of capture their attention? Um, then what you do is you have to actually come back to the content, right? And figure out like, okay, what are the key moments within that content that then gets back to that intent and that channel purpose, right? So I think a good example is um like on LinkedIn, everybody's on there. They're on there probably in a mindset of, doing something for work, seeing something. They're there intentionally for thought leadership. And that doesn't mean you can just throw up anything bland. You have to have an opinion, a perspective. That's what's going to capture somebody, right? So I'm going to scan that content for what is the perspective that we have here. How can I pull out 5? Instead of just pulling out 1, that's going to give me the thread for making multiple posts. And whereas vice versa, if we're on Instagram, okay, we're really trying to highlight our core values. What within this content does that? Right? What are our core values? Where does that shine? Even though this is a thought leadership piece, where can I pull that out? Um, and then I think for format, that's where you can get like a little fun of okay, on LinkedIn, what's working really well right now? On Instagram, what's working or really well right now? And I feel like we've gotten into this space in social media where we're like, forget the algorithm. We're trying to like get beyond the algorithm, try to reach people. And yes, that's why I started with defining the audience, like how am I going to reach somebody? What's their goal when they're on this app? What are those key moments? But ultimately, I needed to show up. And if the platform's telling me I'm deprioritizing content that doesn't have anything original in it, I'm deprioritizing content if you put a link in there. Like stop doing that. So I think that's important to note is like it can also be bigger things of like if you've tried a carousel 50 times, that's excessive. If you tried a carousel 10 and it's just really not played out for you, like stop putting your effort there. It's just stop trying to, push the square peg into the round hole. Just make it round. Um, so that's the next step is like matching it. I call it matching it to platform priorities is like how now I have what I'm going to say. I have how it meets the user, how it helps me achieve my goals, but now I need to say like how does it come to fruition? Is it a reel? Is it a carousel? Is it a poll? Is it a story? Um, and yeah, I think that's just going to help you with like smarter distribution. Um, So then from there, like how we actually get it into a piece of content, and if you asked me this a year ago, it would have been such a different answer. We have custom
Hmm,
GPTs all around.
sure.
Like there's not the nice thing is, like, AI has supported this so much, like, you don't have to think. I remember the day when I'd have to open up the Word doc and be like, "Here's my LinkedIn post. I need to craft a caption," right? What's the asset gonna be? We leverage custom GPTs, so we have them built out in our brand, tone, and voice. We have them specific to, like, the platform. So, like, we have a LinkedIn Red Door GPT. We have a LinkedIn Instagram, right? And it's going to start actually shaping that into platform native, like, executions, and then we're feeding performance into that to tell it, like, "Keep doing more of this, stop doing this." So, for more of the, like, visual platforms, it doesn't quite get you there from, like, a creative aspect. Like, you still do have to have kind of that thought of, like, "Ooh, this would be fun," right? But for LinkedIn, like, it can really get some stuff going. Um, so, yeah, and then I think from there, it's about, coming back to make sure you're not one and done. You pulled out 5 key moments, you've talked about platform priorities, now just let the GPT make 10 posts for you, make, you know, 5 Instagrams for you, and then while it's working on more of, like, the tech space and the concepts, if you need to film some B-roll to go behind it, if you need to go capture somebody on video, you totally can. Um, but at least you're not starting from scratch in the sense that, like, you're not setting a script for the video necessarily, you have the key talking points. Um, and that's always, like, the biggest challenge for us is getting somebody in front of the camera. We're busy. People don't necessarily wanna do that, but for the more visual platforms, which I do recommend B2B, industries be on when it makes sense, you really do need somebody in front of the camera, so it's not completely that you're copy pasting, or that you're able to copy paste and just tweak it. You do have to do some lift for, like, an Instagram or a TikTok, but luckily, you've got a lot of, like, the framework built for you.
Love those points. I particularly love the use of custom GPTs. That's terrific. I did the same thing for my personal podcast, the AI Hat podcast. I've got a promoter
Yep.
script and or AI assistant that helps me draft the LinkedIn post. And then what's really cool is it reads the transcript from my podcast
Yep.
interview, and then I have it create its own LinkedIn newsletter. So
Love
my
it.
LinkedIn newsletter is actually my AI chief of staff weighing in on its perspective as an AI on the conversation we had on AI. It's super fun, but I'm wondering, 'cause this is the challenge that I often run into or the tension that I feel. I share the same vertical clips, like, basically everywhere,
Mhm.
and what you're saying is I shouldn't, because different audiences are gonna be looking for different kinds of things, and the same vertical video clip isn't gonna play as well, and I see that in the metrics. But the challenge or the tension I feel is, but if I don't share it to Facebook or
Mhm.
Blue Sky or X, where I'm on all those channels, am I missing potential audience? Does that
Mm.
ever occur to you?
Yeah, I think that is a big that what if is always, like, a big question mark. I think where I come from at it is, yeah, to be fair, if you're just, hitting, let's say you're in Sprout, right, or whatever your management tool is, you're hitting it and you're saying clone to Facebook, I guess that takes no time, so in effect, there's no downside to that, I think, but if you're actually, to your point, if you're trying to you see that it's not performing, right, in that sense, and so, like, is it even worth that? Is it doing anything for you? Something that we talk about a lot is, like, did it actually hurt you more than it helped you? Because I think you mentioned it in the beginning of, like, okay, maybe somebody scrolls right past it. Now it's not even gonna be served the next time, and maybe the next thing was something that they wanted to hear about. I think, like, a big and this is where it gets, like, a little dicey with, like, that, and I guess for Facebook, it wouldn't be an early adopter, but, should we be on the channel? Like, something that we always go to is, well, are there conversations in your realm on the channel, right? So, like, Instagram is a great one for us where we do repurpose thought leadership on Instagram because we see stuff in the UX realm. There's UX tips and tricks, there's Canva tips and tricks for social media,
Oh, yeah.
right? But a landscape review of, like, the conversations in your space is gonna be super crucial to help you see, like, people just aren't there talking about that, right? And that's not saying that you couldn't create something, but I do think it's exponentially harder for B2B. right? To have that, like, virality where, like, "Oh, now all of a sudden people are gonna be talking about, um, this topic." I have an example from a client, like, I that I think is, like, applicable, where we had somebody in, like, a med tech space, and they really wanted to be on TikTok. And they were like, "We will be like, I think we're gonna hit it, it's gonna be great." But they didn't wanna talk to a consumer, right? They only wanted to talk because there was sort of a B to C to B play, which is something to consider for some of those channels. Um, but they didn't wanna talk at the level of the consumer. They wanted to talk at, like, the PhD level of somebody who really understands this technology, the science behind it, and everything, and we did a landscape review, and we're like, "Realistically, no one on TikTok is talking about this." It's not to say it wouldn't blow up, it's just you have to think about, like, the general consensus there, right? Of most people are on there, they're trying to be entertained. If we are going to do something, it should be towards, like, a larger group, right? So, like, more of that general education for, like, a consumer play. Um, and so, yeah, I think that's, like, what you have to, like, kind of navigate
Mm.
is it going to hurt me in the future if I send them something that they don't like? Is it even worth my time? Is there a niche in this space for me to play in? What is it? And that would like maybe help steer like, do I just repurpose that same video clip or am I taking something else?
Absolutely, because you hit it on the head. I go into Agorapulse, I upload the vertical video, and it's just a matter of hitting all the check boxes for the different platforms, and I can customize it if I want to, but again, being transparent, I don't. It's easy to do. I mean,
Right.
I can just edit each individual post, but I don't, and I just let that clip go out everywhere, so definitely giving me some food for thought. I'm wondering if you could share an example of one of your own
Yeah.
campaigns about how you adapted that B2B campaign across multiple platforms, getting a little specific for us.
Yeah, yeah. I had a fun example. Hopefully people will like this. So we don't do like I said, we do have separate, very intentional purposes for our channel. So we don't repurpose a ton in the sense that um we've tried to streamline even our own efforts. We used to also be like that where we just click it, yeah, it's good, right? And we were like, we really want to do something on Instagram. So I think we need to take a step back. Um, but one thing that we do is we every year we do an annual like for the love of insights and we run it on Valentine's Day and it's about like audience industry research. And so that is something that we will repurpose to both channels because we host like an event. And so coming back to like what's our purpose on Instagram, our purpose is to show our culture, our core values. And not only can we show that through the event, but like our philosophy behind how we talk about audiences is very much like our core values of marketing, right? So, I'll talk about, like, both years because we've run it for 2 years now and we do it. So, we'll do more traditional, like, thought leadership on LinkedIn, right? We turn it into a white paper. We have the video that you can watch, so it's, like, a pretty big initiative for us, and we'll dissect out those key, um we call them predictions, for the year, and so we'll dissect those out into, like, carousels and snippets for LinkedIn, right? Pretty standard. I think most people are doing that from a B2B space. Um, what we'll do for Instagram is we filmed, like, being in the space, so we'll do more B-roll behind that. We'll still do the same insights, but thinking more from instead of calling them predictions, right? We'll be like, "Get to know your audience this year," right? So it's many things like that. Like, I think there are even micro adjustments where we haven't hit copy paste on the LinkedIn carousel. We haven't even just resized the LinkedIn carousel, but it's all the same education and information. It's just we've put it over B-roll video to make it more enticing for the Instagram platform. We've used like shifted our language to be a little bit more colloquial because people are a little bit less formal on Instagram. And then LinkedIn, we're really trying to hit like that maybe not shock and awe, but that the idea of we've made a prediction, hear it out, right? Because that's will attract somebody because it feels like something that other people haven't done, right? Because how could somebody else have done the same prediction as us? Um, so yeah, that's and then to take it back 1 year, I think last year what we did was we actually still did a carousel on Instagram, which I believe that's because carousels were working really well for us at the time, whereas like reels have been doing better for us recently. But we made the insights into Valentine's cards. So again, it's not you are increasing the lift of doing that because it's much harder than just doing one graphic that you resize in Canva with the touch of a button and post it both places. But it is the core of, like, bringing the idea to the table and what the information is still there. It's just like a little extra push to make it appropriate for that channel.
I honestly think it's truly amazing how honed in you are on the purpose of each channel. I see people talking about, oh, Instagram's for behind the scenes, and you've like gone 3 steps further and say, well, it could be, but it's really about our showing our culture and our values, which is amazing. Folks, we're talking with Megan about tactics for optimizing content for different platforms without spending tons of extra time. And I've got several more important questions, but first, let's see about saving you some time in this process.
When I take a look at the biggest core benefit for Agora Plus, I have to look at two sides of the equation. I have to look at what it does for us as far as managing our community and all of the conversation management tools, which I appreciate so much. But from a far more pragmatic point of view, it saves us money. It saves us a lot of money because of the productivity features that are built in with how it manages those conversations. We don't waste time. We're efficient.
Agora Pulse allows me to get through all my messages and my replies really quickly. That's probably the number one reason for me wanting to use the tool. It saves so much time.
A big draw for me with Agora Pulse was the ability to manage my YouTube comments. That is a huge feature for me, and here's why. Because up until then, I basically would have to go into my social media manager system to do everything there, and then I'd have to log out, go back into YouTube, and do the same thing there. Now, when you are managing multiple clients, this becomes a huge waste of time, right? And what we want to do is streamline that efficiency. So we can log into one website now. We can manage all of our major social profiles there, and we're able to serve our clients with more clarity and purpose.
They worked with us, they helped train us on how to get everything up and going, and we were able to cancel out all the other tools that we didn't need anymore. So it saved us a lot of time and a lot of headache for my team members, as they're, now they only have one tool that they can maximize their clients in.
So, Megan, you mentioned Canva. Are you using Canva? Are there other tools that you're using that are kind of helping you manage all these different formats and platforms?
Yeah, we do use Canva. That is our primary like content creation tool. Just because it is so user friendly. Someone on my team love his quote is like, we're like the graffiti artists to like the like painter, right? So that's what Canva is for us. It is really nice because you can resize, there's templates, right? I'm sure everybody's in there. We also use CapCut for the mobile friendly video edits. So like fingers crossed that that doesn't go away because we'll have to look for something new. Um, but and then like I mentioned, the custom GPTs, like those are a big part of our like captioning, our concepting, and bringing, getting that idea for how am I going to make this work 5 different ways, right? GPT is like so our friend, so we don't have to read in detail every white paper that we put out. We don't use any type of content calendaring system anymore. In the past, we'd used Airtable. We just found it to be somewhat of an unnecessary step. So we're always about when we're looking at, where can we spend our efforts better? Well, our efforts better spent creating that Valentine's card versus just republishing the PDF that we have on LinkedIn, versus creating a content calendar in Airtable. But if somebody is looking for a content calendar, it's pretty good. Um, yeah. And then we have our social media management tool that we're using to schedule. We recently switched to Heyorka. But I don't think we're really using that necessarily in the like repurposing front. Because we're trying to do that a little bit more intentionally on the outside and then bring it into the platform.
Got it. So, as you're doing all of this content on different platforms, how do you really know what's working? How are you measuring success and how are you tying it to actual business results?
Yeah. I I will say, so we have like a framework and it is pretty um copy paste across channels. Just because we're trying to find the metrics that don't negate the impact of social, um, but are maybe a little bit more intentional than what everybody looks at when you just go into your reporting tool. Um, so realistically, what we're tracking as like a company is um what our reach, right? A lot of people look at impressions. Yeah, that's nice to get eyeballs and that does mean something, but realistically, like head count. We need to know how many people did we actually reach? Is that number growing? Are we getting better at it? Um, the other thing is what I call active engagement rate. which kind of takes out the fluff of like a like or a reaction on LinkedIn because that's all great. That is going to support you in getting seen because the algorithm does factor those. But realistically, that doesn't necessarily mean you have any intention of ever coming to us for a service at Red Door, right? But if you share it, if you save it, if you actively comment on it, that's a little bit more intentional, right? Now we're talking about, okay, you might be interested. It really resonated with you. Um, and then, of course, follower growth. Because if you follow us, like that definitely hints at something we did something right. If that caused you to be like, yep, I want to stay tuned into them. And the reason that I start with those metrics is because I think, especially right now, the conversation on like brand versus performance marketing is so big. I don't know if you've seen like some of the studies that have come out, but Work published something calling it like the performance marketing doom loop, right? Where people have gotten so into like, did it make an impact to the business? Did it make an impact to the business that we've forgotten all the brand stuff that actually
Right.
feeds the bottom of the funnel? And I think that is where social is so powerful is not even people say brand awareness, right? This like broad term. Okay, great. It might be the first time that somebody sees you, but it's also where somebody starts to build salience, right? Consideration, preference, because that's like the organic stuff that you're putting out every day. That's like building that relationship with somebody. And that's really big for us at Red Door because we recognize that like choosing an agency, even deciding that you need agency support is not a, it doesn't take a week to decide that. That's a month-long process, right? So we're trying to like just build long-lasting relationships with people, and those are the metrics that really showcase or highlight that. So, at the end of the day, that might not be the, like, business impact necessarily, but for us, those are indicators that you will become a prospect or you are a prospect right now. That being said, we also follow the traditional metrics, right? Did we actually get clicks? Did they travel through to the website? Did they fill out a form? Did they download the piece of content once they got there? Those are important. We just are very cognizant that like the interaction with social is very non-linear. It's not a 1, 2, 3, 4 step and then they're on the site. Like they're trying to digest content on the platform. And that's really the behaviors that we've come across. LinkedIn is a little bit different where like they might actually click through, but specifically on Instagram, people aren't I mean, you could think about when you're on Instagram, you're not on Instagram and like, "Oh, yeah, let me go to that website." Like, you're on Instagram to be on Instagram, and so if you got something great that was served to you, amazing, you save it, you send it to somebody, like, "Look at this." Right? And so those are the behaviors that we're more interested in as a social team, um, and then the rest is kind of just our due diligence to make sure that we're having some sort of business impact, and we do see a lot of traffic coming from LinkedIn, so you can definitely see that, but it's not our top priority, I would say, as far as measuring that. Because if you measure that and you don't see it come through, you might stop social all the way. But again, now you've gotten into that doom loop of are you doing anything around brand that's making an impact?
Love that approach. You're so right. Fantastic points. A moment ago, you talked about trends on like Instagram, audio or, our carousels working, that sort of thing. Are there
Mhm.
specific resources or industry experts that you're keeping up with to help you be mindful of what is and is not trending anymore on a particular platform?
Yes. Yes. Totally. So trends, I would say we later is a really great resource. They come out with like a weekly trend and it's kind of just refreshed every month. We've also used a tool before. It's called Viral Moment. I think they're in the phase, they have like a trend light. So they're a social listening tool that is specific for video. They're very interesting if you're looking for those insights. I highly recommend going to them, but they have a lighter version called Trend Light that is more like the video trends that you're seeing. We also just are natively in the platforms, right? So I think and this is something that always gets a little exhausting being a social media manager, but like that chronically on social, it's kind of an approach we take too, just to make sure that we are seeing the trends. And I think that's pretty much from a trend perspective, like how we stay in the loop. Not a lot of like newsletters that we see come through because I think the cadence for newsletters is a little bit off for really capturing a trend.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you're absolutely right. The best social media managers are spending a lot of time on their key platforms, and they're observing that data. I'll give a shout out to Annie Mae Hodge. She puts out a weekly post on Instagram and LinkedIn, at least, maybe other platforms as well, maybe X too, that talks about the latest developments and trends and that sort of thing. It's fabulous. It gets so much attention, and it gets so much attention. She deliberately inserts fake news because it gets copied by people, and then she mocks the people who copied. Facebook released a latest feature that says "Go touch grass" every hour, and then you'll see it in other people's posts. It's ridiculous. They don't even read it; they just copy and paste it. But that's a testament to just how good her content is, right? So, Megan, this has been absolutely fantastic. Is there any final advice that you'd like to give B2B marketers who are feeling overwhelmed
Yeah.
by all this pressure to post on all these channels?
Yeah, so first and foremost, take a step back, understand your audience. Hopefully I've highlighted that through all the questions today. But I think that's like the number one key, because you don't have to be everywhere, right? And that's going to be your number one ticket to identifying, like, is it most impactful to be everywhere? So then I'd also say, as like a follow-up to that, is like prioritize impact for output, right? Again, coming back to one idea can be sliced 10 different ways. Because I think something else is like, you don't need to create 10 white papers, right? Do the one white paper, and if you just keep promoting it in unique angles and finding those key messages within it that are going to resonate with your audience, like, that's also going to help. So then you can start to feel like, maybe I can do something different for Instagram versus LinkedIn. And let's say you're on X as well, right? Maybe all three of those things, now you have the time to dedicate to making those feel unique. And again, it's not about completely overhauling. You don't have to go out and film something completely new necessarily, but just tweaking it a little bit to make the message a little bit more resonant for people on that space.
Terrific advice. Megan, you've been an absolute delight and so insightful. Thank you. For folks who want to learn more about you or your agency, they want to reach out and connect with you, where should they go?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about Red Door, our website is super easy. It's reddoor.biz. If you want to learn more about me, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. As I said, I'm always chronically online, so I should be able to get back to you super quickly.
Fantastic. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, all of you, for listening or watching wherever you are. That's all the time we've got for today. Of course, we'll have all of Megan and Red Door Interactive's links down below in the show notes. Don't forget to find the Social Pulse Podcast B2B edition on Apple and drop me a review. I'd love to know what you think. Until next time. And that's a wrap for this episode of Social Pulse Podcast, hosted by Mike Alton and powered by AgoraPulse, your social media success partner, helping you simplify your daily tasks and improve your ROI. You can learn more and grab a trial at agorapulse.com. If you found today's conversation valuable, please hit subscribe on your favorite podcast players, and we'd be so grateful if you'd leave us a review. For more great content and to join our Social Pulse community, head over to facebook.com/Social Pulse Community. Until next time, remember, social media simplified, impact amplified.